Stewart-Haas Racing could be shutting down at the end of 2024. Dale Jr. is showing slight interest in going cup racing in 2025 for Junior Motorsports, and Chris Rice says that Call Racing is not merging with Trackhouse. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got some NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're first going to take a look at a ton of paint schemes that have been revealed over the course of the last couple days. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into it. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Cam Waters' 2024 AUK USA scheme that we're going to see at Sonoma. Obviously, it was announced Cam Waters will make his Cup Series debut in a couple weeks at Sonoma Raceway. This paint scheme looks phenomenal. RFK usually does a good job. This one's no exception. It looks really solid. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Taylor Gray's 2024 SEM scheme that we're going to see this weekend at North Wilkesboro. This looks all right in my opinion. Like the colors of it. It's kind of decent. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack this weekend at North Wilkesboro. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Timmy Hill's 2024 Route 66 scheme that we'll see in the All-Star Open. Scheme looks great in my opinion. Very simplistic, but I do like the colors of it overall. Looks pretty solid. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is William Byron's 2024 Liberty Patriota scheme that we're going to see at the Coco 600 next week. This looks very similar to other Liberty paint schemes that William Byron's had for Patriotic Weekend. It does look solid though. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack at Charlotte. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Kyle Busch's 2024 Lenovo scheme that we're going to see this weekend at North Wilkesboro. Looks great in my opinion, to be honest. Looks really awesome. Nice colors on. I've always been a big fan of Lenovo schemes. It looks exciting and great in my opinion. And the final paint scheme we're taking a look at is Michael Medall's 2024 Chicago White Sox scheme that we're going to see at the Chicago Street Course. Looks pretty good in my opinion. Like the colors of it overall, and it's pretty awesome. Excited to see that the Chicago White Sox are going to work with Michael Medall at the Chicago Street Course. Pretty exciting stuff. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the North Wilkesboro Purse Money. Every time we have a Cup, Xfinity Series, and Truck Series race, Bob Pockus puts out the purse money for that event. And according to Bob, for the All-Star race, it's $3,784,525. For the Open, it's $678,700. And for the Truck Series race, it's $730,651. Man, that truck purse is not very good. Hoping with the new TV deal that they get more money. But the All-Star race, decent money for sure, but there are less cars in the field, and the Open is pretty low as well. Nonetheless, some decent purse money for this weekend, and the purse money is unfortunately a little bit lower than normal. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about James Murray. As it was announced yesterday that James Murray will be the Grand Marshal for the Cup Series race at Sonoma Raceway. I believe James Murray has been part of Practical Jokers for many, many years, and now he's going to get the chance and opportunity to be the Grand Marshal. I really can hope he can bring the energy and excitement. It's really cool to see that True TV is getting involved. Obviously, I think True TV might be part of the new NASCAR deal, if I remember correctly. So really cool that they're trying to get some of the new TV partners involved. And pretty cool to see that James Murray will be given the command for the Cup Series race at Sonoma. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're unfortunately going to take this episode to a sour note. As it was tragically announced yesterday that Wanita Epton has sadly passed away at the age of, I believe, 103 or 104 years old. Wanita Epton had been a legendary ticket holder who'd been at every single Daytona 500 since the start of 1959. Her legacy is going to live on for many, many years. My prayers and condolences do go out to the Epton family currently at the moment. We're currently thinking about them at this moment, and I'm sending my thoughts and condolences out to the Epton family. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the NFL schedule. Now, that the NFL schedule being announced earlier this week, we're going to talk about NASCAR and their links to these events. So there's 9 of them. So for the Atlanta Cup Series race, Pittsburgh, which of the Steelers, will play at Atlanta at the Atlanta Falcons Stadium. Then you've got the Watkins Glen, and Buffalo will be in Miami, so they'll be out of town. Then for Kansas City will be playing at the Los Angeles Chargers Stadium, so they'll be out of town. Then for Talladega, they will be, I believe, at Tampa Bay. Atlanta will be at Tampa Bay. That's kind of the market that Talladega's in. Then you've got Charlotte. Atlanta is going to be at basically the Carolina Panthers Stadium. For Vegas, Las Vegas will be playing at the Rams Stadium. Arizona will be playing at Miami Stadium. Martinsville, that will basically be at Carolina Panthers Stadium. And then, of course, for Phoenix Championship, the New York Jets game will be playing against the Arizona Cardinals. Very interesting stuff. You got 4 or 5 that are basically at home, while the rest of them are going to be away. This doesn't shock or surprise me, obviously, with the NFL coming out. NASCAR always kind of goes up against and tries to compete against it. I'm not really surprised or shocked to see this. Is it a little disappointing to see that there's some NFL games going to be happening at the same time? Yes, but obviously the market's big enough where I don't think it'll be a massive issue. I do worry about that Vegas game a little bit, though. I think Vegas is, they're actually not going to be in town, so hopefully the attendance will be helped there. But we'll see how it goes forward. Nonetheless, very interesting stuff, and interesting to see that the NFL schedule has a little bit of links to that. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Josh Reaume. As it was reported by Joseph Wrigley that Josh Reaume will drive the 22 for Reaume Brothers Racing this weekend at North Wilkesboro. Josh Reaume is one of the owners of the Reaume Brothers Racing organization. I believe has made a start or two so far in 2024, driving a 33 truck if I'm not mistaken. But now we'll be driving a 22 truck, I believe, for the first time. It's a decent opportunity for Josh, obviously being the owner, but let's be real and honest, that 22 truck has struggled, and if qualifying does get ran out, I think they're going to be able to make the show, but one truck is withdrawn. I believe that either being Trey Hutchins or Justin Carroll, if I remember correctly. There's one truck that will go home, and I think it's either Trey Hutchins or Eric Almirola if it does get rained out. Still a decent opportunity for Josh Reaume. Hope he makes the best of it. It is a short track. We'll see how he ends up doing, and we'll see how he ends up performing at North Wilkesboro this weekend in the 22 truck. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as unfortunately I have to take this episode to a sad note, as it was sadly confirmed last night that Eddie Gossage has sadly passed away at the age of 65 years old. For those who don't know Eddie Gossage, he was a legendary track promoter back in the day who promoted a lot on Texas Motor Speedway and was a true race fan at heart. And Eddie Gossage cared for Texas Motor Speedway for many, many years and was the president of Texas Motor Speedway for a very, very long time. He built up Texas Motor Speedway from the ground up, and it became, at the time back in the day, a very popular facility. My prayers and condolences do go out to the Gossage family. His legacy is going to live on for many, many years to come. I don't know if there's going to be another track promoter that was like Eddie Gossage, and it's just a really sad day for motorsports as a whole to lose a track promoter like Eddie Gossage. So my thoughts and prayers and condolences do go out to the Gossage family during this time. We're thinking about Eddie and hoping the best for the family currently at the moment. A really unfortunate situation. Sending my thoughts and condolences out to the Gossage family during this time. Really unfortunate situation, a sad situation as a whole. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the 2025 IndyCar schedule. As it was reported by Adam Stern yesterday afternoon that IndyCar is setting up some impactful schedule moves for 2026, but no major changes are expected in 2025. If I remember correctly, a few months ago, Mark Miles had stated that they were basically planning to make some really big changes for 2025. But now it sounds like it's not going to be till 2026. This is something we hear every single year. They're saying that they're going to make some massive and major moves toward the IndyCar schedule every year. And they really haven't made any major changes in recent years. Sure, they brought the Milwaukee Mile back and National Super Speedway's back on the schedule. But let's be real and honest, National's only there because they couldn't do the street course race, and it's likely not going to happen next year as well. And Milwaukee was basically brought back, but Texas is no longer around anymore on the IndyCar schedule. I think when you look at IndyCar, yes, you do have a lot more ovals now, but personally, we need to see more ovals on the IndyCar schedule. And personally, the IndyCar schedule needs to be a little longer. One, don't put the Thermal Club inside the season. Have a race at Homestead Miami Speedway, because I think Homestead would put on a pretty awesome show for IndyCar. Could be race of the year contender, considering Homestead always puts on great shows for NASCAR. I'd like to see them basically do that. I just think when you look at IndyCar, they're obviously trying to figure out what their next TV partner is going to be, which it sounds like Fox is not even 1,000% in the running anymore, and I'd imagine that probably will go back to NBC at this point for next year. We'll have to wait and see what happens, but once again, I'm a little disappointed with the situation here that it sounds like there's no changes coming, considering a few months ago they said they were going to make changes, but it sounds like right now they're not making any major changes toward the IndyCar schedule. But am I really shocked and surprised? Honestly, no, I'm not massively shocked and surprised to see this overall, to be perfectly honest with you. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about in-car cameras. Now, we're going to talk about Atlanta Motor Speedway here in just a little bit. But it's reported by Jeff Gluck and many reporters in the industry that in-car cameras, instead of being free on NASCAR.com going forward, they're going to be going to the new Max service starting in 2025. This doesn't shock or surprise that they're trying to offer and find a way for the in-car cameras to work. But I'm not as big a fan of this move, and here's why I'm not as big a fan of this move. One, this used to be free on NASCAR.com. Now, NASCAR, I think, is still working on some stuff for next year that hasn't been announced at this particular point, but I am personally not a big fan of putting the in-car cameras on a streaming service and charging people more money to go there, trying to find a way for people to go over there. But I get they're trying to find a way to also increase subscriptions, and I do know people that are probably going to go over to Max just so they don't have to watch the race broadcast. To me, in my opinion, though, I just think this is a little bit of a step backwards. Granted, it's probably not going to, I think Max is $10, if I'm not mistaken, so it's not the end of the world, but with all the streaming services and cable especially that you're going to have to pay for, you're going to be spending a lot of money as a NASCAR fan. Granted, when you look at the NFL, you're going to be spending $1,000 on their stuff. I'm not going to complain as much about NASCAR's, but still, I just wish the in-car cameras could have at least been on NASCAR.com as well as Max. If you want to put them on Max, fine, that's understandable, but personally, in my opinion, I'm not as big of a fan of putting the in-car cameras just on Max exclusively going forward. I think they should also still be on NASCAR.com, but personally, that's just my opinion. I don't think they should just be exclusively on Max. I think they should also be on NASCAR.com because I think it would also save teams a little bit of money, in my opinion. But nonetheless, I'm not surprised or shocked to see this, considering the fact that this is what they're going to do, and they're trying to make as much money as possible, which I can't blame them, to be honest with you. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Larson. As we're going to talk about some Kyle Larson stuff here in regards to the Indy 500. Now, Jeff Gluck and many reporters in the industry spoke to Kyle Larson about his Indy 500 run, because remember, Kyle Larson is competing in this year's Indy 500. He says, should he make the Fast 12 tomorrow afternoon, he will be in the air by 6:20 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to hopefully be at the All-Star race at 8 o'clock. If the All-Star race happens on time, with the weather being a little bit unfortunate. He needs to leave IMS on race day for the Indy 500, though, by 4:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. To be at the Coast 600, though, Fox and NASCAR are working together trying to make sure that they might delay the start just a little bit so Larson can get in on time. Now, when he talks about 1,100 miles, he says, if Tony can do it, I can do it. Now, this, of course, this is a little bit of a joke at Tony Stewart. But Kyle Larson's first day at Indy actually went pretty well. He actually was the 15th fastest overall. When he actually jumped on the board at the beginning, he was the fastest car. And he did have some decent speed in the no-toe times as well on day number one. Day number two, unfortunately, did not go so well for Kyle Larson. They made an engine change, a precautionary engine change to Kyle Larson's car, and Larson only made about 23 to 24 laps altogether. He did get up to 25th position. He did have some pretty good no-toe speed, but unfortunately for Kyle Larson, didn't have the overall pace and the time that he needed to go. Now, I still think Kyle Larson has a great chance and opportunity to win this year's Indianapolis 500 if he can just get on track. He looked really good in the traffic in day one, and he's been doing more of the traffic speed and not that single run speed. But Kyle Larson, you could tell yesterday, was very frustrated about not getting the track time that I think he absolutely needs. And I don't blame Kyle Larson for being frustrated about that, considering I'd be a little frustrated too if my team is sitting there and not getting me on the racetrack. They should have had him ready to go. They probably should have had the mandatory engine change later in the week or maybe next week when they're actually going to be on track for more practice and stuff, if Larson, of course, ends up making it. Still, it's interesting stuff. I've been following the Kyle Larson story with the Indy 500 very, very closely, and I think Kyle Larson hopefully is enjoying his time at this year's Indianapolis 500. I know he's been frustrated about not getting the on-track time. Hopefully, he'll get more on-track time going forward in the next couple of weeks as we get closer to the Indy 500, which is about a week away from now. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about wet weather tires. As it was reported by Bob Pockrass on Wednesday afternoon that NASCAR will do a wet weather tire test at Homestead in mid-September. Now, it is not expected, though, that they are going to use these wet weather tires at least in 2024. We've been seeing NASCAR trying wet weather tires at a lot of different tracks. Remember, we did a wet weather tire test after the Clash in February, if I remember correctly, after the Clash had concluded. They got back and multiple drivers did a test there. And now they're doing tests at 1.5-mile racetracks. And if there's not a lot of spray that's kicked off from these wet weather tire tests, there's a very good chance that possibly they are going to use these wet weather tires at 1.5 and bigger tracks going forward. I think it's really interesting to see for sure that they are doing this, and I like it they're trying it at the bigger ovals as well. Now, obviously, they're never going to do it at super speedways at Daytona, Talladega, but I think if this goes successful, you could see it at a track like Kansas in the future. And the hope is, because remember, these are not tires that they're going to use in like really big downpours, but they're going to use it for like damp conditions, so like to speed up the drying process a little bit and to try to complete the race in the same day. And I think it's really good that they're, like I said, I think it's really good that they're trying this overall to get these races in as soon as possible. To me, I'm not surprised about this, and I think it's a good move for NASCAR on their part to try to get these races in as quick as possible. To me, it makes a lot of sense. I'm not surprised about this, and I think it's a good move overall for them to try to get, like I said, I think it's really good for them to try to get these races in as quick as possible. It's unclear who is going to be doing the test. I don't think it's been announced at this point, but that test will be happening in about 4 or 5 months from now, and if it is very successful, it will likely be used in 2025 or could be used in the not-so-distant future if the test is very successful. We'll see if it is successful, see how it ends up going forward. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Justin Bonsor. As it was announced yesterday afternoon that Justin Bonsor will make his NASCAR Xfinity Series debut at New Hampshire next month, driving the number 19 car for Joe Gibbs Racing. Justin Bonsor, for those who do not know, is a 3-time Whelen Modified Tour champion, but also made his ARCA debut earlier this year in a 30 car for Rick Jones Racing, where unfortunately I think he had an engine failure near the end of the event. Justin is a legend of the modified scene, and if there's a track that gives someone an opportunity and a shot, it is definitely at a track like New Hampshire, where he has won races at, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Justin is a very talented driver, and this is kind of very similar to when Ryan Preece had the chance and opportunity to make his debut at New Hampshire. And guess what? He nearly won that race, finishing inside the top 5. And the 19 car, while it's not been as fast as the 19, or not the 19, the 20, or the 50 or the 81 this year, the 19s has some decent pace and speed. And I think it almost won some races this year, if I'm not mistaken. I think that Justin has a very strong chance and possibly to go out there and win his debut, and it wouldn't surprise or shock me if he does in fact go out there and win in his debut in Xfinity. And if he does well enough, this could lead to a really great opportunity and chance to run full-time in the NASCAR Xfinity Series next year with a team like Joe Gibbs Racing. And I think, like I said, this could open up a lot of doors going forward for him. I'm really excited for Justin. It's an amazing, great opportunity for him, and I'm looking forward to see that he'll get to make his NASCAR Xfinity Series debut with JGR later this year. I think he'll do overall very excellent and a very good job with the team. I think he's got a really good chance and opportunity, and like I said, if he does well enough, this could lead to him having more starts going forward into the future. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Atlanta Motor Speedway. As it was officially announced on Wednesday late morning that Atlanta will be the first race on TNT. This will also be the first race of the in-season tournament that is going to take place in 2025. Remember, there are going to be 3 qualifying races that will determine that, and then there'll be the 5 races with the first one coming on TNT. This is going to take place on June 28th of 2025, which means this is going to be a Saturday night event. This will be one of, I believe, 3 Saturday night races that are going to take place in 2025. This has been rumored by that NASCAR and X-Count that's kind of an insider in the industry, but now it's officially confirmed that Atlanta is going to be the first race on TNT, which Dale Jr. is going to call. I think it's going to create some very interesting things for the bracket especially, but when you look at this is a really good move, in my opinion, to make Atlanta your first event. I would also expect that the Chicago Street Course will likely happen once again, and that will be the July 4th race, which I think will be on July 3rd or 4th, around July 3rd or 4th of that year. And then obviously, of course, there's a couple other races that could happen during that time. We also are expecting, because with Atlanta going back, what happens, because this year it's a playoff race, what happens to the other races after that? Well, Darlington will once again likely be the first race of the playoffs for the Southern 500. The only reason it's not this year is because of the Olympic break, but the Southern 500 will likely be the first race of the playoffs, and then Daytona once again will be the regular season finale. This doesn't shock or surprising to see us to want to move it back to the summer, and it's going to be a night race because it would be a big mistake if you had Atlanta as a day event event. I think it absolutely needs to be a night event when it is in the summer. You can have the spring race, which will likely be the second day once again. You can have that race early in the year if you want to, but to me, this is the right decision overall to have Atlanta and the summer, and I think it's better because September is really hot especially, and I'm glad to see that it is a night race this year. Nonetheless, really great decision in my opinion, and glad to see that Atlanta will be the first official race on TNT. I think it is the right decision overall, to be perfectly honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Larson. As it was officially confirmed in the media center and basically during the media availabilities on Wednesday that Kyle Larson will not be at North Wilkesboro on Saturday for the heats. This has been rumored that Kyle Larson was not just going to miss practice and qualifying for North Wilkesboro, but he also was likely going to miss the heats. Now, Kevin Harvick is not eligible to run the heats, to my understanding, because he did not run last year. So more than likely, Kyle Larson will start at the rear of the field on Sunday and will not be there on Friday as well. Now, obviously, we already talked about it, but Kyle Larson, of course, is competing in this year's Indianapolis 500. And I think he's putting all of his focus on trying to make this year's Indianapolis 500, and he needs as much on-track time as possible to get that experience. Obviously, Kyle Larson is, like I said, trying to qualify his way in. I think this is absolutely the right decision to make. And personally, if I was at NASCAR, I would give an exception to have someone else drive my car. Maybe like a Shane Van Gisbergen, perhaps, who won the All-Star, not the All-Stars, but won a Chicago last year. I'd like to see SVG maybe get a chance, an opportunity to run as substitution for Kyle since SVG is eligible to run. But obviously, Kyle Larson, I think, wants to run the All-Star race. Granted, he says NASCAR is a big priority for him, but I think he needs to keep his priorities straight and try to focus on qualifying his way in to the Indianapolis 500 this year. And if he's able to qualify into the Fast Six, Tony Kanaan is a substitution driver just in case if they absolutely need him, especially if the weather comes into play. We've heard Justin Allgaier is a potential driver who could substitute for him if Kyle Larson is still in Indianapolis, but Larson is likely going to put his focus on trying to make the Indy 500. Still, it's not a major surprise and shock to see this, and I think Kyle Larson is making the right decision to not fly out to North Wilkesboro, which he's already won the All-Stars 3 times at this point. I think he is overall making the right decision. So we'll see what happens, but Kyle Larson will go and, in fact, miss the All-Star events on Saturday, but he'll likely be flying back in on Sunday for the main All-Star event. Doesn't surprise or shocking. I think he is overall making the right decision, to be perfectly honest with you. Like I said, I think he is making the right decision, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Phoenix Raceway. As it was officially confirmed yesterday morning that Phoenix Raceway will once again host the championship weekend in 2025. The championship weekend will go from, I believe, October 28th to November 1st, or October 29th to November 2nd. Meaning that there will likely only be one off week in 2025, and that will likely be during the early portion of the year on Easter. This has been rumored despite the fact about a month or two ago that Phoenix was not going to be hosting a championship race once again. They will be hosting the championship race and weekend once again in 2025. This doesn't shock or surprise, to be honest, especially if all the reports came out this likely was going to end up happening. But to be honest with you guys, I am not a very happy camper about this, and here's why I'm not very happy about this. Personally, I think Phoenix Raceway is not that great of a racetrack. The facility itself, yeah, I think there's no denying that the facility at Phoenix Raceway is very, very good. They've got one of the best facilities in NASCAR, one of the best facilities probably in the United States. But here's my problem with this situation. To me, Phoenix is just not a great racetrack itself. Yes, it does sell out and the people do support Phoenix. But personally, I just don't think the track puts on good racing. But if you're a fan of a track like, let's say, Homestead Miami Speedway, you might be in good terms. We talked about this about a week or two ago, but it sounds like that they had a meeting very, very recently, and it does sound like they're pushing to get the championship race in 2026. The reason why Homestead's not getting it this year is because the track is not fully renovated, and they need the track renovated, and it does need to look really, really good so fans can be really excited about being there. To me, when I look at this situation when it comes to Phoenix, again, I'm disappointed to see that they are getting the season finale once again, because I think it's grown very, very stale. And again, if Homestead, because I think Homestead will put on a much better product, but I think if you're a Homestead fan, you saw a race 4 or 5 times in a row, you probably like it switched up too. But I want to see a race that's going to be a little exciting. Granted, I don't want to see a race that is absolutely a big clusterfuck, but still, I think I want to see a race that is at least exciting to watch. Phoenix has just never really had exciting races. It's had maybe one or two good finishes overall since I became a fan, but the track just doesn't provide the greatest and most exciting racing. But I do think there's silver lining because Homestead could host season finale in 2026. Again, I'm not surprised or shocked about to see that Phoenix once again is getting the season finale in 2025, but I am disappointed to see they're getting it. But once again, like I said, I am not massively shocked and not massively surprised to see that Phoenix will once again be hosting the season finale in 2025. It doesn't surprise or shock me overall, to be perfectly honest with you. But then again, Homestead could host it in 2026. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about North Wilkesboro. As it was just announced a few minutes ago that North Wilkesboro once again hosts the All-Star Race in 2025 on May 18th of 2025. The Truck Series race take place on May 17th of 2025 and the Cars Tour will once again be back in 2025 as well. This doesn't shock me, to be honest, that North Wilkesboro once again is going to be hosting the All-Star Race, but I'm going to be real and honest, I am a little disappointed because as much as I think it's cool that the All-Star Race is going to be back in North Wilkesboro next year, I truly do believe that North Wilkesboro personally deserves to be a points-paying race because that's been the ultimate goal of going back to North Wilkesboro since we've gone back there, is eventually have a points-paying race. We came very close to having this as the Easter race in 2024, but that didn't happen, and then it got reported about a week or two ago that this likely was going to be the All-Star Race once again in 2025. And as much as, like I said, I'm very happy to see it back on the schedule, I just wish that this was a points-paying race. Then again, though, at the same time, the short track package and the short track product has just not been that great and phenomenal recently, and NASCAR still needs to work on the short track product. And obviously this will continue like a Carolina swing going forward because Darlington's in early May, though I think it should move a little bit farther back. And then of course you do have the Coke 600, and then of course you have other races among other things. And again, there were rumors that I was hoping that we would kind of have Bowman Gray as the All-Star Race and North Wilkesboro will get a points paying event. But at the same token, same time, like I said, the short track product just hasn't been amazing or great. But again, at the same token, same time too, I just wish that this was a points paying race because the last time North Wilkesboro hosted a points paying date, it was almost 30 years ago to this point. And while we've been going back to North Wilkesboro, at least for the Cup side, it has been basically non-points races as an all-star event. I'm still glad we're going back there. Do not get me wrong. I'm just a little disappointed to see that we're going to be hosting the All-Star Race once again at North Wilkesboro. I think we should try it at a track like Rockingham, perhaps. I know Carson Osbar said that we might be going there, but I think he was trolling a little bit, to be honest. But I really hope in the not-so-distant future we can go to North Wilkesboro and host a points-paying event there instead of hosting as the All-Star Race. Am I surprised about this? No. But again, like I said, I'm a little disappointed to see that North Wilkesboro will be hosting the All-Star Race and not being a points-paying event in 2025, but I'm not shocked or surprised. I also expect the Cup Series schedule to be released in the next couple weeks because we keep getting new schedule announcements, it seems like, every single day. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Will Brown. Now, I did a video covering this on the channel on Wednesday evening, but it was announced Wednesday evening that it's officially confirmed that Will Brown will make his NASCAR debut at Sonoma in June, driving a 33 car for Richard Childress Racing. Will Brown is the current points leader in the Supercar Series, driving for AAA Engineering, which Red Bull is associated with, by the way. And what's really interesting about this is, if I'm not mistaken, Erebus Racing is involved with this deal. There's also a chance, possibly, if this debut goes well enough, we could see Will Brown driving the number 33 car at the Chicago Street Course as well, because to my understanding, Brody Kosecki was supposed to drive his car, because originally Brody Kosecki was going to be the driver of the number 33 car, but that deal fell through after Peter Adelton, who works at Mobile X very closely, and Walmart as well. Basically, there was a falling out between both of them, which is why Will Brown is getting this chance and opportunity. We've been seeing a lot of drivers in the supercar world coming over to NASCAR in recent years. First, you had Shane Van Gisbergen, who came over, had a lot of success, won the Chicago Street Course race, and is, of course, looking to go full-time Cup racing in 2025 next year. It has been pretty solid in Xfinity so far this year, currently sitting 15th in the points. Then you've had Brody Kosecki make his Cup Series debut last year at Indianapolis, and I know he's a little interested in still wanting the race in NASCAR, but he's put him on hold to focus on supercars at the moment. Then, of course, you do have Cam Waters, who's made a couple Truck Series starts with Florida Sport Racing, and like Will Brown, he's also making his Cup Series debut at Sonoma as well with RFK Racing in the Stage 60 program. Some thought maybe Carl Edwards, Haley Deegan was going to drive, but it was confirmed that Cam Waters will make his debut, and now you've got Will Brown coming in. Now, what are my realistic expectations for Will Brown? I think Will Brown can go out there and win, not win, but we've seen the RCR cars be pretty fast. I think Will Brown could legitimately be a top 10 threat, at least for sure. Again, it's a very competitive field, and it's going to be a very strong and solidly competitive field in the Cup Series race. But I certainly think that he's going to have a really good chance and opportunity. He's going to be going up against some really good competition. Drivers like Kyle Busch, Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, among other names that are in Bubba Wallace as well, among other big names in this series as well. I wish that SVG was running, but obviously he's not running at this point, which is disappointing. But like I said, I'm excited to see that Will Brown is going to get his chance and opportunity to make his Cup Series debut. I really hope he can make the best of it, because I truly think that Will Brown could go out there and be very, very solid. We'll see how he ends up doing, and we'll see if he can be very competitive at Sonoma, because I think he's got a good chance and opportunity to run well. I think he could at least for sure get a top 10, depending how he does. We'll make a video talking about his performance for sure at Sonoma Raceway. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the first of three major stories in today's episode as we're talking about Kaulig Racing. There's been a lot of rumors and rumblings over the course of the last couple of weeks that Kaulig Racing could potentially be merging with Trackhouse Racing. Now, Chris Rice, a couple days ago, went on Sirius XM NASCAR Radio, and he says they are not merging with Trackhouse Racing, and they are not selling charters going into 2025. They are going to be sticking around. Now, he does mention that they try to create a lot of diversions with the media, and he said that apparently a reporter, which he did not disclose who that reporter was, but that reporter apparently had gotten mad at him for not knowing what is going on for 2025, but they said that 2024 is a gap year. Obviously, one of the reasons why there's been a lot of talk about Kaulig and Trackhouse merging is because of the fact that Kaulig and Trackhouse are very, very close together. They work together very well. Shane Van Gisbergen, of course, drives them full-time in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. And like I said a minute ago, currently sits 15th in the standings, about 27 or 28 points below the cutoff line. He's been doing a solid job, all things considered, with Kaulig this year. But the reason there's been a lot of talk about it is because Kaulig Racing's Cup Series program has been falling off this year. The last couple of years, the team has just taken a dip, not just in their Cup program, but their Xfinity Series program. You look at their Cup program, right? Right now, that 16 car is a mess. They were supposed to have Matt Benedetto drive for them. That didn't happen. AJ Allmendinger was supposed to run full-time this year. That did not end up happening. Chris Rice said last year that they were going to shock the world, and then they announced Daniel Hemrick was going to be in 31. As much as I do like Daniel Hemrick, and I think he's got a lot of talent, Daniel Hemrick is not someone who's going to go out there and shock the world for you. So what I was thinking was, and I'm thinking this as well, why not, if you're not going to merge, why not at least sell the 16 charter and maybe put your full focus on the 31 charter and have Daniel Hemrick drive for them? Or, basically the easiest thing you could do is merge with Trackhouse Racing and then, of course, work with your Xfinity program and basically have your Xfinity program still be around as Kaulig Racing. That would be a big no-brainer move because Kaulig Racing's taken a big step backwards. They lost Chandler Smith when he went to Joe Gibbs Racing. They lost one of their better drivers in Justin Haley, who had a lot of success. And it's not just their Cup program that's taken a big step backwards in recent years. It's their Xfinity Series program as well. 2021, all three drivers went on to go to victory lane. You saw Justin Haley win a race or two. Jeb Burton won at Talladega. And Allmendinger made the Final Four and won the regular season championship in a pretty good thrilling battle with Austin Cindric that season. But every single year, they've been taking a step backwards. And AJ Allmendinger, I think, is sitting outside the top 5 in the points when I had predicted that he was going to be one of the guys going for the championship this year. And it hasn't happened at this current point. So to me, if I was Kaulig Racing, it would be a safe choice to at least sell off a charter at the end of the year. Unless they're working on something behind the scenes and it's going to fix the problem. But what we've heard is that, like I said, that charter rumor of them merging with Trackhouse is still a very good likely possibility. But then again, we don't officially know at this point what exactly is going on because Kaulig Racing throwing out diversions, that's going to make a lot of people not happy, in my opinion. And I just think this, like I said, there's still that good chance and possibility that they are going to merge. Because we heard this with Chip Ganassi. Chip Ganassi said, we're not going to sell any charters and we're not going to sell our Cup Series team off. And then a few weeks later, they sold off their Cup Series team. So to me, in my opinion, I just don't know exactly what you do in their situation. But when I look at this situation from perspective, it is a little frustrating to see that Kaulig is kind of kicking their toes up. They need to figure out what they're going to do going into next year, especially with silly season getting off the ground very quickly. Also, he does mention a charter agreement, which is a good thing, reason why they probably haven't really made any moves yet. But to me, when I look at this situation with Kaulig, I certainly think that they are going to merge next year. I don't know when it will happen, but I do think that they're going to make some changes next year. And I certainly think a merger is very likely, and it's a very possible situation that could come into play. Again, I understand Chris Rice not wanting to hold on and keep the team around in Cup, but at the same token, same time, I look at Kaulig Racing, and I think it would be a very smart decision on them to basically sell or merge with Trackhouse Racing and get that going, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next major story of today's episode as we're talking about Junior Motorsports. There's always been conversation since around 2021 about the possibility of Dale Jr. in Junior Motorsports going up to the Cup Series every single year. And once again, that got brought up basically this past week. Dale Jr. was on Sirius 7 NASCAR Radio with Dave Moody as he was, of course, getting promotion done with Amazon. He was in Amazon and TNT campuses doing promotion and going on a lot of shows. And Dale Jr. spoke on the possibility of going Cups or bringing his team up to the Cup Series in 2025. He says that Junior Motorsports there's a couple paths that we can go with in regards to going Cup Series racing. He says that Junior Motorsports could move up to the Cup Series in 2025. But Dale Jr. also brings up another big possibility that could end up happening for him. He says that he could invest in a current Cup Series team that is in the field currently at the moment, invest in a charter, and go from there. And that's the way. Instead of just focusing fully bringing Junior Motorsports up to the Cup Series, he could invest in a current Cup Series team, and that's the way we can go. We'll talk about a potential team that Junior could invest with because I got a team that he might be able to invest with. But let's say Dale Jr. brings his team up to the Cup Series, right? There's been that talk and conversation that they could move up every single year. And again, it's kind of one of those things where you believe it when you see it. But I've always thought that Dale Jr. bringing Junior Motorsports up to the Cup Series would probably be the best move overall for him. Because Junior Motorsports, they are one of the best, most popular organizations out there. In fact, they might be the most popular organization outside of Hendrick Motorsports. And obviously, if Junior Motorsports was to make the move up to the Cup Series in 2025, Rick Hendrick would, I believe, have to take his name off the ownership bill, considering that Rick Hendrick does have some ownership stake in Junior Motorsports at the moment, which I don't think would be a problem. They could still supply Hendrick engines over to Junior Motorsports in case they do get that. But if they were to move their team up to the Cup Series potentially in 2025, who could they have drive for their organization? Well, I think it's very easy at this point. You've got Sam Mayer, you've got Justin Allgaier, Sammy Smith, and Brandon Jones. I don't think Brandon Jones is going to be in that next year because Brandon Jones has been struggling. Yes, he brings a Menard sponsorship, but I don't think that Brandon Jones is going to be back at Junior Motorsports next year. I think Sam Mayer will be a really good option considering Sam's been doing a really good job in Xfinity. He's got 5 wins up to this point in his career. Yes, he got a penalty this past week, but still I think he'll be a major threat for the championship this year. And I think Sam is getting close to being ready to go Cup Series racing. Yes, he's only 21 years old, but I think he should have, actually 20 or 21, I should say. I think he'd be a really good candidate to move up next year. And then you've got other outside factors, like some people from the Chevy camp, like a Connor Zilic, who can make some starts in Cup next year if they were to move up. But let's talk about the other possibility of investing in a Cup Series team. There's one team I look at, and that is JTG Doherty Racing. We know that JTG Doherty, we know that Tad and Jody Geschechter are likely not going to be back at JTG Doherty Racing next season. And they're going to be heading over to Joe Gibbs Racing with Kroger. If you've been seeing a lot of the flyers, you don't see Tad and Jody Geschechter's name on any of the flyers anymore. And instead, you just see team owner Gordon Smith. We know there's potential investors that are coming in to work with JTG next year. We know Stenhouse is going to be back in that 47 car next season. But do people want to see Junior just get invested in a current Cup Series team, or do they want to see him fully bring Junior Motorsports up? For me, and it's just my opinion, I've been wanting to see Junior Motorsports join the Cup Series for a very, very long time because I certainly think that's what I think a lot of fans, including myself, truly want for him. But at the same token, same time, if it's going to be easier just to go and invest in a Cup Series team and spend money on a charter, that would be a really good move on his part. And probably there would be a name change. Maybe Junior Doughty Racing. that could be something that they end up doing, like Junior Doherty Racing, and basically do that, because I think Brad Doherty is still going to be working with the team. And I just think Junior Doherty Racing is a name that would be very interesting, because we saw that when Brad Gzowski invested in Roush, they called it RFK Racing, and look what RFK's done. I think Dale Jr. could be the way he goes, where he invests in a team like that, and that's how he runs the operation. To me, though, I think a lot of us fans really want to see Junior Motorsports in the Cup Series next year. I think there's a chance it does end up happening, but I think there's also a possibility that it doesn't end up happening next year. So we'll see what happens in regards to the possibly Junior Motorsports moving up to the Cup Series next year, but there is a chance, a possibility that it could happen. It'll be a big story to watch for as time progresses and goes on, but I think there definitely is some big interest for sure, and I wouldn't be shocked or completely surprised if we do see a team like Junior Motorsports make the jump up in 2025, but there's also a chance that Dale Jr. could get involved with JT Doherty, and maybe that's where they get the charter from next year. There's a chance that charter could still be up on the market, but Junior could also invest in that team next season. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we're talking about Stewart-Haas Racing. There have been a lot of rumors surrounding Stewart-Haas Racing over the course of the last few months. Early in the silly season, we had heard that they were looking maybe only sell one charter. Then, as the silly season went on, we had heard that they might only sell two charters at the end of the year. Then about 2 weeks ago, it was reported that they were looking to maybe merge with Front Row Motorsports and sell off two charters and maybe give the other two to Front Row. But now there's a lot of rumblings and rumors speculating and circulating that Stewart-Haas Racing altogether could be shutting down their whole entire program completely. Not just their Cup Series program, but also their Xfinity Series program as well. There's a lot of rumblings that they're going to do this. Now, why would Stewart-Haas Racing potentially shut their program down at the end of this year? Well, number one, they lost a ton of money and they're no longer a Tier 1 Ford organization. Yes, I know Chase Briscoe's disproved that, but they're no longer really a Tier 1 organization at Ford. Yes, they've taken some major steps forward with their performance this year, but they're not bringing in a lot of funding and sponsorship. Last year, they lost their two big funding guys. Kevin Harvick had Busch Beer. That's gone over to work with Ross Chastain this year. And then Eric Almirola, who was with them basically since 2018, he went and basically they lost a Smithfield sponsorship, and Eric's now driving for JGR and Hattori Racing in the lower series at the moment. There's a chance he could go back and Cup, maybe with a Toyota team in the future. They lost a lot of their funding. And as much as Noah Gragson and Josh Berry bring in a little bit of funding currently at the moment, they're not bringing as much. They had an opportunity to get Kyle Larson and Kyle Busch. That did not end up happening. I think Tony and Gene have lost a little interest in being in the sport. Now, going back to the rumors, like I said, I think there's a great chance that they do shut their program down at the end of this year. So where do the charters go? Well, I think two of the charters are going to go to Front Row Motorsports next year, and I think that Josh Berry will be one of those drivers in that organization. We know Michael McDowell is not going to be back with Front Row Motorsports next season. Todd Gillen is more than likely going to be back with Front Row next year in 2025 as they're looking to sign an extension with the team at this point. He's been getting very close, signing a 1 or 2 year extension. And I also think you look at Riley Herbst and Cole Custer, who are currently in Xfinity. Many believe that Cole Custer is going to take over the 34 car next year in 2025. Cole has been tied with SHR for many, many years, and Cole is very high up in the Ford timeline and pipeline. So he could end up going there next season. You've also got, of course, that being Riley Herbst, who's bringing sponsorship funding. He's being looked at by a lot of Cup Series teams at the moment right now. So that could be where Riley Herbst ends up going. Now, what happens to the other drivers at Stewart-Haas Racing, that being Chase Briscoe and Noah Gragson and Ryan Preece? Let's begin with Ryan Preece. I think Ryan Preece's future is very uncertain. I could see him going to Rick Ware. I could see him going to RFK if they expand next year. But I don't see Ryan Preece being full-time next year, unfortunately, in Cup. I could see him going back to Xfinity or Trucks next year. Let's go to Chase Briscoe. Chase Briscoe could stay in this Front Row Motorsports merger, but there's a lot of rumors and rumors that he's going to take over the 21 car next year for the Wood brothers. A lot of the speculation is that Harrison Burton is not going to be back next year. Many are believing that Harrison Burton is gone with the Wood brothers at the end of this year. And many believe that Chase Briscoe could take over the 21. A lot are going to say that 21 car is not that good. I don't think the 21 car is as bad as people make it out to be. Harrison Burton, in my personal opinion, while I do think he's a good dude, he is not that great of a driver, in my opinion. Chase Briscoe is going to take that 21 car and do better. And he's got sponsorship from Mahindra and High Point. So absolutely. And he's a Ford guy. So he would be a very good candidate to take over the 21 next year, and I think that's where he'll end up. Let's talk about Noah Gragson. He could go to Front Row Motorsports, but according to Door Bumper Clear, there are other teams looking at him. And apparently there's teams that you wouldn't think of. People speculated Joe Gibbs Racing. He won't go back to Toyota. There's two teams in particular that I could see Noah Gragson going to. I could see him going to Trackhouse Racing and taking over for Daniel Suarez. Noah Gragson would fit right into that organization and does bring sponsorship. And I think he'd do better than Daniel Suarez. There's no disrespect to Suarez, but I think he'd do better than Daniel Suarez. And then I think of RCR. There's been a lot of rumblings and chatter that RCR with Austin Dillon that he could retire at the end of this year and go to more of an executive role. I think Noah Gragson would be a perfect fit for the 3 car next year. I think he'd do a really good job in that car. And like I said, he's got Associate and Bass Pro. And I think Gragson, how well he's been doing this year of SHR, I think he would do better in that 3 car right now than Austin Dillon is doing. So that's where he could go. But what also happens to the other 2 charters from SHR? Well, we know there's a lot of teams that are interested in getting those charters. Junior Motorsports is interested. We know that for a fact. 2311 Racing is another organization that's looking to expand next year. You've got, of course, Bo Walsh and Tyler Reddick over there, but they want to have a 3rd car in the future. Corey Heim is the most likely option to go full-time, but what about other drivers that could go over there next year? Guys like maybe, Eric Almirola, maybe Sheldon Creed, or Chandler Smith, perhaps, if Martin Truex Jr. doesn't retire. Chandler Smith could be in the running for this seat as well. Or if they want to get crazy, get Carl Edwards or Kurt Busch out of retirement. That could be a possibility. Then you've got some other potential options. Trackhouse Racing. We know Trackhouse interested in expanding. They do need to expand going into next year. They've got Zane Smith, who is likely going to be full-time with them next year, and Shane Van Gisbergen, who I think is going to be a full-time Cup. But then you've also got Connor Zillage. So that could be a potential option as well. I think Trackhouse is definitely going to be one of those teams going after his SHR charters. And then, of course, you have other teams like Legacy is looking to expand. RFK is looking to expand for a 3rd car for drivers like maybe Cam Waters, Haley Deegan, Ty Majeski. That could be a possibility over there as well. And Legacy's also looking to expand. But when you look at SHR in a nutshell, right, everyone believes that they are going to shut their program down, and they're starting to believe this rumor. They could still be around and they could have 2 charters, but I'm starting to think that they're going to be shutting down at the end of the year. Again, there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes, and I think all the silly season bets are hinging on what happens with Stewart-Haas Racing, if they're going to be around next year or not. And personally, in just my opinion, I think Stewart-Haas Racing is going to shut down at the end of this year, which is unfortunate if they do shut down, but I think there's a chance and possibility that they could shut down at the end of this year. We'll have to wait and see what happens to see what Stewart-Haas Racing decides to do. But to me, I think there's a chance that they will shut down at the end of 2024, and those charters likely are going to go away at the end of this year. So, that is good for today's NASCAR news and motorsports news video. One thing, guys, for watching. Please subscribe to the channel. Notifications on so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support my Patreon as well. Let's go below that and comment your thoughts below on today's video. Do you think Stewart-Haas Racing is going to shut down? Let me your thoughts in the comments below. And do you think Junior Motorsports will go Cup racing next year? Let me your thoughts in the comments below. If there's any more major news that breaks later today, we'll have it on the channel later this afternoon. Then tomorrow on the channel, if the Truck Series race happens, we'll have a Truck Series race. We will also have reactions maybe to qualifying as well. And we'll have a lot of great content dropping over the course of the next couple of days. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode. And I'll see you guys next time for more awesome NASCAR content, other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, buddy.